Inside of the concentration camps, prisoners were forced to work incredibly hard, and they were often worked until they could either not work anymore and were killed, or died completing their daily routine. The SS guards would whip and beat inmates to force them into submission, and many would be executed on the spot if they could not work. Guards such as Irma Grazer, Josef Kramer and Amon Gerth would patrol with their pistols and would not hesitate to take someone's life. But inside of the camps, there were many different methods of execution used, and one of the most common was to simply execute them through labour. For all of the executions at roll call yards on the gallows, there were other inmates killed through just being forced to work incredibly hard with very little food and water. Concentration camps utilised local businesses, and many people were forced to go and work in local industry, where SS men and women ran the factories brutally. But inside of one of the most brutal concentration camps in Austria was a specific part of the daily routine, which was notorious and was known for its evil and incredible toughness. The stairs of death inside of Mauthausen were horrific, and the SS used them to kill, and they also brought sadistic games and practices to take the lives of inmates. Join us today as we look at the horrific executions of the stairs of death, and as always, to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Mauthausen was a concentration camp found on a hill in the market town of Mauthausen in Upper Austria, close to Linz, the town where Adolf Hitler grew up. It was a huge camp which had over 100 subcamps serving in it, and there were 3 substantial sites named Gusen, which were also incredibly tough. The Mauthausen camp operated from 1938, following the German annexation of Austria, until it was liberated by the US Army. Throughout its time in operation, around 190,000 prisoners passed through Mauthausen, and more than 90,000 people were killed there. Inmates there were expected to be killed through their labour, and there were many different businesses that utilised prisoner workforces. Even Heinkel and Messerschmitt, that manufactured aircraft, utilised prisoners to work on their planes, and also the V-2 rocket. To begin with, Mauthausen did not have a gas chamber inside of the barbed wire fence, and those prisoners who were too sick to work or were malnourished or too weak were then sent to other camps to be exterminated and killed by lethal injection, mostly at Hartheim Castle. But as the camp exploded in its numbers, the amount of prisoners killed in this way was too expensive. But this led to a gas chamber being built around 1940 after a mobile gas chamber was used in the form of a gas van. Mauthausen was known for being one of the most disgusting and brutal concentration camps. As well as suffering from a lack of food and overcrowding, with disease also being a problem, the prisoners were at risk of being poorly treated by the SS guards too, who were often very violent. The hard labour conditions were incredibly tough, as many were forced to work inside of the quarries. In the summer it was incredibly hot, but in the winter it was freezing, with temperatures being around -30 degrees, that led to even more death. The food rations got shorter, and prisoners on average weighed 40 kilograms. The violence of the guards was also terrifying, as they would throw prisoners onto the high voltage electric barbed wire fence, and would throw the inmates' caps outside the boundary of the camp, so they would have to go and get them. Guards in the watchtowers would then shoot them, believing they were trying to escape. Also, icy showers were used, where 3,000 people were forced to take a freezing cold shower and were killed after contracting hypothermia, and many of these showers did not have a drain, meaning inmates were simply drowned. But one of the most notorious and disturbing parts of the whole of the concentration camp system within the Third Reich was the stairs of death which were found at Mauthausen. These were a series of 186 large steps in which prisoners were forced to carry granite blocks up to the top of the quarry. Inmates would be forced to carry the sometimes 50-kilogram blocks, many which weighed more than the inmates themselves, up the stairs a number of times a day. This intense suffering, along with the malnutrition and exhaustion, often led to the stairs of death claiming many more lives through accidents. Prisoners would drop their blocks, breaking legs and feet, or many would collapse and their stone would then land on them, shattering bones. Also, some inmates would collapse in front of others in the lines, and they would then fall onto the person in front, and this would create a large line of people falling onto the next person, all the way down the stairs or up the stairs, where hundreds of people were there at one time. They had very little rest, and the SS guards would chase them up the stairs of death, and would whip them, forcing them to move quicker, up the steps, which made accidents more likely to happen. Accidents happened on a daily basis on the stairs of death, and they led to even more killing. Also, SS guards would bet and gamble on prisoners who would make it to the top of the stairs of death first, and with this they would bet on them like it was a sports match. Carrying the incredibly heavy blocks up 10 steps would be torture, but the 186 would be true horror. One account from Mauthausen states, in 1944, the SS led 47 Dutch, American and English officers and flyers, barefooted to the bottom of the quarry. On their first journey up the 186 steps, they forced the men to carry 25-kilogram stones on their backs. On each successive journey, they increased the weight of the load. If a prisoner fell, he was beaten. All 47 died because of this treatment. One prisoner scratched onto the wall of their cell at Mauthausen, "If there is a God, he will have to beg for my forgiveness." It took around 3 months to exterminate a prisoner through hard labour at Mauthausen, but the stairs of death would lead to death coming quicker. Some skilled stonemasons tried to help others by making stones lighter for certain inmates who were suffering more than others. A former prisoner, Edward Mosberg, stated that if you stopped for a moment, the SS either shot you or pushed you off the cliff to your death. But another harrowing and shocking part of the stairs of death was known as the Parachutists Wall. This was a sickening game the SS would play with the lives of the prisoners. The Parachutists Wall was where the SS guards would force prisoners who were completely broken and exhausted following hours of work to race up the stairs of the quarry with their heavy blocks of stone. This race would then be over when they reached the top, and the inmates would then believe those who had won would be saved as they were good workers and fit. But those who survived were then placed in a line-up at the edge of the quarry's cliff. They were met by an SS guard who stood armed with their gun or pistol. The SS man would then give the prisoners an option, or a choice. They would say a prisoner would have to either on the ledge of the quarry push the person in front of them off the quarry, meaning they would murder an inmate by pushing them off the cliff. The other option was that they would be executed themselves by a gunshot there and then. So prisoners were either forced to either murder or be murdered themselves. But the stairs of death was a sickening part of Mauthausen and the concentration camp complex that was there. The SS guards used it as a sick game to terrorise prisoners and inmates on a daily basis. They used the stairs to exterminate as many people as they could, and they would play God with the lives of people every single day. They developed sick games around the stairs of death. They were some of the most feared parts of any concentration camp. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.